guys, welcome to another episode of NetSec Now. Today we're going to discuss getting into the meat and potatoes of network security auditing. We're going to discuss all the phases in depth of a security audit, whether it be vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, internal audits, external audits, you name it. We're going to get into it, guys, and we're going to discuss some of the tools we're going to be using inside of Kali Linux. So moving on, let's come up with a disclaimer. Any information disclosed in this series is provided for the sole purpose of learning network security. We take no responsibility for any misuse of any information we provide. We only suggest you audit the systems you have permission on or in your virtual lab. So in short, please don't be an idiot. Moving along, let's get into it. Phases of penetration testing, internal and external. Okay, so a lot of people seem to have a misconception of what the process or the flow should actually be for a penetration test or a network security audit. Well, that's what we're going to get into. So the very first step is information gathering. And this applies basically on the internal auditing and the external auditing levels. So information gathering is doing your homework, essentially getting all of the information that you possibly can up front before you even begin anything. So you want to take notes, write things down. You don't want to try to keep mental notes because, it may mess you up. You may forget some things down the line when you need them. There are some tools out there in Kali Linux to work with that. Some of them are free, some of them community versions are very limited and you can't use them professionally according to their license agreements, things like that. But really all you need to do is open a notepad, guys, and type away, or keep a pad and pen by the desk like I do, and write some notes down as you're going. So the next step then is reconnaissance. So you got to build a case. You have to take all of the information that you gathered and you have to build a case for the best starting point of analysis, or the best starting point of penetration testing, so on and so forth. So you have to take all that information and really plot your course like anybody would do, a pilot or a ship's captain or something like that. You got to plot your course of the best way to take action. So moving forward from that, you actually get into the access or the exploitation. And I say bombs away because it's pretty much how it goes. So you've gathered all your information, you did your homework, you built a case, you have an avenue to start traveling down first in order to attack the network successfully. So basically at that point you got to find the exploits that exist for that service or vulnerability or whatever you found in building your case and doing your homework, and then you got to fire it off. Sometimes you may come up with false positives where it says that there's a vulnerability for a service, but they may have had a patched version installed. So while the version of software like an FTP server or web server or something like that says the specific version matches up with the vulnerability that's in the database, there might be a patch applied. So don't be surprised if you run into some roadblocks from time to time where you'll find that you fire one off and it's supposed to match up and it doesn't work. All that means is you'll have to go back to your notes and take a different route. So then after you exploit the network and you're in, you got to do your post-exploitation exercises. So now that you gain access to any system, one system, 10 systems, all the systems on the network, whatever it is, you have to figure out what you're going to do next. See, doing your homework and getting into a system, it's two of the steps, but what are you going to do to leverage that system to gather intelligence about the other systems on the network? So you have to set up things like pivoting, and you can do like man-in-the-middle attacks, and there's all sorts of good stuff. You could do ARP spoofing with the man-in-the-middle attacks. There's all sorts of good stuff, and we'll get into all of that, guys, in the videos to follow this. So after that, you're basically down to your reporting function. So what you do is you take all of your results, not only in your information gathering, your reconnaissance, and your access exploitation and your post-exploitation, and you build a report. Now, again, there's some tools in Kali Linux that will help you build your reports. There's no one way to do it on the free software, the open source software that we'll be using. Unfortunately, there's some paid versions of software that have some fancy reporting capabilities. OpenVAS is free, and it does have a pretty good HTML reporting facility inside of it, as we've shown in the other videos. Nmap, you can export it to an XML and use a converter to convert that into an HTML file. Um, you know, Armitage and Metasploit is really limited. The same creator that created Armitage, he came up with Cobalt Strike, which is a paid version, and I was wrong in one of the other videos. I think I said it was $1,500 a year. I believe it's either $2,500 or $3,500 per year. It's relatively expensive. But anyway, so you're going to be able to report. What I recommend is using OpenOffice. I mean, OpenOffice is great. That's what I use to create these slides, even inside of Windows, and you can use that inside of Linux. I mean, that's in fact where it came from, was the Linux world. And you can build PDFs in there. You can build presentations like this one here. You can build HTML stuff. I mean, there's a bunch of different things you can do, and it's like Office for Windows, but it's open source. So once you build a report, you have to sit down with, if you're doing it for a large company, you may have to sit down with multiple people of the higher ups, the higher level ups. Small or medium-sized companies, you maybe just have to sit down with the IT administrator and the business owner and discuss what you found. So in your report should be not only how you found it, what you found, how you gained access to it, and then what the fixes are for it. So you'd be listing like the CVEs or the vulnerabilities that you found for it, links and references to that, and the links and references to fixing it and patching it if such is available. So then after that, once you're done and you present them with their report, you have two options. For an extra fee, you could help them fix their issues, or basically let them go on their own and call you back to schedule a re-audit, if you will. And that's really what you're going to be doing, is basically holding your hand, and you should be re-auditing the network once you're done, and once they've said they've implemented all of your fixes, and just to make sure that they're now secure. So moving on, as we said, there's different types of audits. There's an external audit, which is outside of the local area network at your customer's location. There's an internal audit, which is inside of the local network. A lot of this you'll find, like the PCI compliances and stuff like that, will require an internal and external. And getting down to the different types of testing you'll be doing is a vulnerability assessment, and you'll just be checking for vulnerabilities against services, software, things like that. And then there's another type of test which you'll be doing is penetration testing. And penetration testing is testing from the outside world in, as well as on the internal side, trying to leverage one of the local machines or being local on a network to launch attacks against internal services. We'll get into the different types of attacks here in just a minute. Also, you'll be doing security policy auditing. Security policy auditing is really just whatever security policy they may have in place. Now, most places do not have a security policy in place. Things like employees violating the terms of service for using the company computers, like for things like surfing Facebook or eBaying or YouTubing or something. You'll have to review that security policy and maybe create one for them. So in the information gathering, here's what we want to do. What we want to find out is, who is our client? Well, who are they? What business are they in? Things like that. You want to find out what they do, essentially, not only just their business name, but you want to try to gather as much information as possible, including, what information have they or do they make public? Check their website. I mean, you'll be surprised at a lot of companies what they put on their website. They'll put an email list of, all the contacts inside of the company, which makes it really easy to do social engineering at that point, right? They'll list stuff like their address, telephone numbers, fax lines, things like that. All things that you should be writing down and keeping track of. You want to find out who their ISP is. Now, I've had some customers that will not even give me their public IP address. They say, well, if you're a penetration tester, you should be able to figure that on your own. So therefore, you have to use different techniques, and we'll get into that on how to actually obtain that information, IP address, so on and so forth. So you want to know what their ISP is, basically. If you don't know their IP address, take a look at some of the major providers around in that area. Do a Google search, and I'm sure you'll come up with a couple of them. What type of business are they in? Are they an importer exporter? Are they a manufacturing company? Are they a stock company that sells on the stock market? Are they otherwise another financial investment type company? Are they a small bank? Are they a school? Are they? I mean, the possibilities are endless. You want to find out what they're into, and the reason why you want to find out what type of business they're in is because you'll better be able to gauge and get better knowledge based upon maybe what type of proprietary software they may use. For instance, manufacturing plants may use a certain type of software. And the reason why you want to find that out is you go to that company's website and you find out that it only runs on Windows 2000. So right ahead, right off the bat, you know that if they're using that software, they're definitely likely using it on Windows 2000 or older. So there's different ways to engineer, your information to suit your scanning techniques. Also, you want to find out who works there. Present, former employees. A lot of times you'll find that disgruntled employees will make posts online on places like Glassdoor.com and Yahoo.com and stuff like that, really, you know, uh, putting out the dirt on the company they used to work for. Like, we work there, and all their Windows XP systems used to keep crashing, and whatever. And it was horrible, and their server would crash every day, and they started blocking Facebook, and you'll be surprised, guys. It's actually pretty funny to see what some of these people have to say, but you can use that in your information and intel gathering techniques to build a case against your best avenue of attack. You may be able to leverage some of those past employees by sending them a letter if it's a large multinational company or a chain or something like that. Oh yeah, and you social engineer them. I worked at the store 2764, and oh, they were horrible, man. I hear you. I know where you're coming from. And then you can get them to tell you more information about the internal network. See, so social engineering plays a very big role in network security and auditing, and we'll get into that too. So also you want to know how many people do they employ. And it may be hard to judge unless you come directly out and ask them. It may be hard to judge how many people actually work there. So again, you go back to their website, you see, is there any extensions, for certain users, like Mary's at extension 101, Bob's at extension 102, Jim's at extension 103, so on and so forth. You'll get a pretty good, average gauge of how many people actually work there. And that'll help you to build your case to work on how many computers you're looking at. What type of network setup are you looking at? I mean, if there's 3 people that work at a corporation, the likelihood of them having a Windows small business server is probably slim to none. So you're going to be looking at just a small work group type of network. Whereas if they had 20 employees or 30, 50, 100, you may be looking at multiple domain controllers or Windows servers on that network. So these are all things that you really need to learn in your information gathering process in order to better base your attack. So some of the tools you're going to be using, as I said, is logic, your brain. That's the best, most intuitive tool that you will use in your entire career, I promise you. Computers can only do so much. Computers do what we tell them to do. When we do a Google search, we're telling them to Google search, something. You have to be able to use your brain, and that's why information gathering is such a critical component of network security auditing and systems penetration testing. Again, with using your brain, you can go to Google and do something that's called Google dorking, and we'll briefly touch on that. I don't use it too much because that's really, it used to be big back in the day, but nowadays, I mean, it's pretty easy to just browse somebody's website, and I mean, you'll be surprised. Social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn.com, these people put out all this crazy information, so there's no really hiding themselves anymore. Everybody's so happy to give out all their information. But Google dorking essentially is specialized Google searches like in URL, and then you're searching for passwords.txt or something, and you put in their URL and that. I mean, there's a bunch of different things. You can read more about it online. I'm sure you can find some resources that'll maybe be able to explain it better than I would. Again, social media sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Yahoo groups, Google groups. You'd be surprised at how much these people put out there. I mean, you can pretty much guess anything about them at that point, which might help you down the line if you are able to, see that they're posting on XYZ forum about, some favorite car they like, and, Jim Harris from XYZ Corporation's posting on there about his 98 Porsche and how much he loves his 98 Porsche. Well, you could probably guess that he's really into cars and Porsches in particular, so maybe try some password attacks, combinations, secret, security questions that have to do with, what was your first car? Maybe he would put Porsche. You see what I mean? You have to use your brain. So, also, like I said, check out their website. Their website's corporate websites will be a plethora of information for you to build your case. Like I said, things from email addresses, extensions, phone extensions, other stuff inside like contact forms, their address, their telephone numbers. I mean, you want everything, guys. There's certain tools in Kali Linux that like are web scrapers that will go out and pull down, certain search terms from their website. But really, you can just poke around manually, spend 5 or 10 minutes, and you'll get a better look or a better view than any pre-built scanner would, because you know what you're looking for. The scanner kind of is just roundabout knowing what you're looking for. It's not going to gain as much knowledge as you will if you physically went to the site. I fully believe in doing things as manually as possible when it comes to information gathering, only because your logic is way better than any tool. Also, do a Whois lookup on their domain name, right? So if they have acmeinc.com, just do a Whois search on the domain. You can do that right in Kali Linux, right in the terminal, or you can do it via, another web page like a lookup or something like that. See who it's registered to. When you find out who it's registered to, maybe it's the technical contact, and they might even have a technical support contact email address in there. They might have a telephone number and a direct extension. There's all sorts of information, name servers that come up. If they're hosted on a public server like GoDaddy or something like that, you could do a dig on the DNS servers maybe and come up with some other sites. I mean, the possibilities are endless. So again, do that Whois lookup, take notes, move forward. As I said, there's some tools in Kali Linux that aid in this. I don't think, a lot of them are open source, but they're the quote-unquote community versions, which are very limited in use, and you're not supposed to use them professionally. Their pro versions are astronomically priced, and if you're just starting out, which this series is geared towards, if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to have the capital to buy all of these very, very, very expensive yearly costing tools. So I'm going to try to teach you how to do it the old school way and do it the manual way for the most part. So again, I can't stress this enough, guys. Use logic. Definitely use logic. Social engineering will come into play. Like I said, if you go find past employees that are disgruntled, if you can clone an email address, spoof an email address and send out some emails, maybe with a payload in it, maybe with a something from the social engineering toolkit, like a fake website, like a Facebook login, or a LinkedIn profile or something like that, where they have to put in their username and password. Possibilities are kind of endless. The social engineering aspect's really going to help you out in the long run, and we'll get to that, and we'll get to different types of social engineering coming up. So the next step here is reconnaissance. Roll up your sleeves. It's time to get dirty. First of all, you have to stay quiet. You don't want to make too much noise on the network. You don't want to let network administrators know what you're up to, especially if they're not privy to you scanning their network and you were hired by the higher-ups or the upper levels. So there's different things you could do. In some of our videos we talked about spoofing your IP. In some of the advanced videos after this sub-series, we will get to using Nmap better to thwart firewalls, IDSs, IPSs, and all that good stuff. You want to do port scanning. Nmap we've mentioned briefly in some other videos. Not only are you going to find the ports, but you're going to find the services. You can do OS fingerprinting to find out what kind of operating systems and service packs you're up against. It'll find MAC addresses if it's possible. There's a plethora of information that Nmap will show you, and we'll get into these tools as we go through the videos and actually doing this stuff and performing it. So service discovery and identification is basically what's going to come out of port scanning. However, you have to know that some services are spoofable to their source port. So meaning, like on one of my Unix machines, let's say for instance, SSH normally runs on port 22. But if I put it on port 6022, if you're only scanning 1 through 1024 on the ports, you're never going to know that SSH exists. Now SSH is a dead giveaway that it's a Unix or a Linux machine, right? Same thing with FTP services. Same thing with websites. Same thing with email logins. A lot of different ports are for different things. So I suggest that you do some manual service discoveries, and we'll get into that as well. But you want to make sure you have a pretty clearly stated, identified list, very clear-cut list of, this port 22 is open. It says it's SSH. I telnet it into it. I grab the banner. and it says it's definitely SSH. So you know it's not being spoofed, right? Some of these port scanners will just go by the port number and guess what service is running on the port. So you want to make sure. Social engineering phase 1, like I said, dig around on social media websites, maybe shoot off an email or a phone call to, their help desk or something like that. We're going to get into vulnerability scanning. We've showed you in the videos before about using OpenVAS and setting that up and doing a basic scan. You're going to want to scan for vulnerabilities. Now, there's two ways to do this. You can use OpenVAS as a standalone just to see if there's any vulnerabilities available. If you're only doing a vulnerability assessment, you can use that. However, Armitage has built into it, obviously, to check the host against its operating system ports and services that are attached to those ports, open and maybe available vulnerabilities for those specific ports and services and OSs. So there's two ways you can do it to double fact check yourself. You could use OpenVAS and then use Armitage with Metasploit and do it the same way. Verification. So again, using logic, you have to check, and check again. As I said, when you're checking ports, port 22 says it's SSH in like Nmap or some other port scanner, you want to telnet into that baby and you want to grab the banner. It's called manual banner grabbing. And it's a trick that we used to do way back in the day before port scanners were even like really popular and able to guess things so accurately. Telnet into the port, make sure it's running SSH or whatever the port is, 21 FTP server, make sure it's running that version of software. Now, once you have all of your things, you want to put it all together and build that case, as we spoke about in the beginning of the tutorial. Once you build your case, now you're going to have a clear-cut path of where you're going next, right? So let's get into that. Some of the tools of the trade that you're going to be using, again, logical thinking, planning is key. You definitely have to have all of your ducks in a row if you want to successfully audit or pen test a network. For port scanning, we're going to be using things like Nmap, HPing3, Netcat, which we actually had a request for a Netcat tutorial the other day, so I'm glad that that's already included in here. There's other things you can use, like I said, Telnet and stuff like that. Vulnerability scanners, OpenVAS is free, of course. Nessus, there's a community version, and then there's a paid version. The community version really isn't great. The paid version is there, but it's very expensive. Metasploit and Armitage, now those are both free. The Metasploit framework and the Armitage as the front end is both free. Then the same guy, like I said earlier, who wrote Armitage, he went out and made Cobalt Strike, which is kind of an upgraded version of Armitage with reporting features and social engineering tools built into it. But I gotta say one thing quickly. A lot of people have taken what social engineering was out of context. Social engineering used to be, and if you've heard anything about Kevin Mitnick, was what he used to gain access to all the telco companies and all these other big companies, was just simply calling somebody on the phone, pretending like he was somebody who he wasn't, and getting them to give up information. It's a fact. People are stupid, and people like to give up information. Just take a look at Facebook. Take a look at, LinkedIn. Take a look at, these people will give you everything, maybe even their social security number, but everything short of their social security number. So you want to keep out looking up for that. There's website scanners that we'll be using, like WebScarab, things like that. We'll get into a couple of them. I really don't use web scanners per se unless I'm actually desperate and I'm looking for an exploit inside of web code, web applications like PHP, ASP, stuff like that, SQL injections, cross-site scripting. I'm not really a big fan of, but sometimes if I know for sure like I can't get any other way, my last ditch effort is to try to scan web apps, their websites and stuff like that. So as I said, you want to use Telnet and banner grabbing for verification. I just went into that. It's all about checking what the port scanner is saying that is running on those ports or listening on those ports. It's all about manually checking and just making sure that that port scanner is on key. RC and port checking, again, it's the same kind of thing as Telnet banner grabbing, but there may be some services that don't give up their version number or even what they are. Especially in the higher level ports, anything outside of 1 through 1024. So you might want to go out and check out, what does this port belong to? And people have posted online, there's RFCs about different protocols that, are not proprietary but belong on specific ports or changeable to certain ports, like IRC, stuff like that. So you want to check that out. Case file software or Notepad, whatever. Like I said, it's all about taking notes. I mean, I still keep a pen and pad next to the desk here, even though I can fire up Notepad or Word or something like that, and fire some information there. But sometimes I'm on the fly, I'm on the move. I just want to do it fast. I write it down, I take quick notes on Notepad, and I am good to go. Now I always have something to reference it back. I don't have to worry about accidentally losing a file, deleting it, not saving it, so on and so forth. So moving on, we want to get into the access exploitation phase. Now there's different types of attacks. There's a remote attack, a client-side attack, a blind-side attack, social engineering attack, fuzzing attack with a DOS or denial of service, and man-in-the-middle attacks. Now, a remote attack is when you're outside of the network and you're trying to exploit remote services. What you're trying to do is just find vulnerabilities inside of those services, open ports. Client-side attack is more of where you already have access to it, or using social engineering, like the social engineering toolkit, and you send them a payload and or a false page. They click on it, they enter in their username and password, and oops, it was false, and it sent it back to you. That's like a client-side attack. A blind-side attack is pretty much just launching everything in your arsenal against a network when all else fails. At that point, you don't really care about being noisy. You just want to make sure that there's absolutely no way in, so you just launch it all. I don't recommend doing that very often, by the way. I mean, it's very noisy and can cause things to crash. The social engineering attack, really, the social engineering attack, you can use things like SE Toolkit, like I said, to spoof websites, send links to people in an email, spoof your email address, get them to log into like their Facebook or LinkedIn page or something, or heck, even click a link that's disguised as a LinkedIn link, and bingo, it opens up a Java exploit and creates a reverse shell back to your box, and you're in. Or you could call somebody on the phone like they used to do back in the day. Call somebody on the phone, pretend like you're somebody who you're not, and get them to trust you enough to either tell you your password or give you their email address so you can send them a certain file that their boss needs to have on his desk by whatever time, and you can't get through to his email because it's busy. Could you please forward it over to him? And as soon as she gets it, she forwards it over to the boss. Now it comes from her and it looks legit. The boss clicks it, you're in. Fuzzing attack and DDoS attack or DOS attack, that's useful if you're trying to do maybe some firewall IDS IPS evasions. They got a very strict policy in place. What you're basically trying to do is confuse the firewall or get it busy doing other tasks like handling attacks while you try to sneak in around the other side of that and get past their filters. There's different types of tools for that. Depends on what you're trying to do. There's also man-in-the-middle attacks. Now, the thing with man-in-the-middle attacks is they're pretty simple to perform. Once you're in a network, you can, or in between a network and a link, like Google, for instance, or their ISP or whatever, you can do ARP spoofing, and you can capture all their packets that they're sending out. So if they're checking emails, they're FTPing, they're going to Facebook, they're going to a forum, they're going to a company website, a vendor's website, something like that, you can capture not only the website traffic, the HTTP headers, the source IP address, the destination IP address, but you can also capture usernames and passwords, even on SSL, which is important to know because there's things like SSL strip and stuff like that that is inside of Kali that will allow you to get around the whole SSL encryption thing. So moving on, some of the tools of trade we're going to be using, as we said, Metasploit plus Armitage. But that's not your end-all be-all of exploitations. While it's good to keep it frequently updated, there may be somebody that's not releasing it publicly, but they found an exploit. They wrote it in C code, and they're just releasing it on their own personal website. So, maybe you do a crafty Google search and you'll find that code, read it over, make sure it's not bad for your system, download it, compile it, and fire it. There's not too many of those scripts that exist nowadays, publicly anyway. So we may not be able to do an example. Maybe I'll write a quick hello world script in C. I'm not really a good programmer in C, so maybe I'll find an example or something and copy and paste it and get you used to how to compile it and fire it. The social engineering toolkit we'll be getting into. We will be doing crafting fake bogus login web pages that look with Site Cloner that look like legitimate pages. You could even do redirects on those that will redirect them again to the original page, so they'll just think that it was a login error and they got redirected again. And this time, if they don't notice, they'll be at the original page. Cobalt Strike, like I said, there's a 21-day, I believe, 21-day free trial on his webpage, which I'll put in the description. But personally, I don't know if I'm going to be getting into that too much. It's kind of like Armitage, it really is. Go check it out on his website and look at some of the videos he has there, and see if that's something that you want to try out for 21 days. Other than that, I think, like I said, it's either 2,500 or 3,500 per user per year. A little expensive. Raphael's a good guy. I don't have anything against him, but just wish that some of the reporting features were in Armitage. I've even sent him an email about it, so we'll see what comes of it. Denial of service attacks. It's going to be rare that you're probably going to do one against your client unless you're testing the firewall, you're testing the IDS or the IPS, just to give them a report of like, hey, you're susceptible to anything over 10,000 packets in X amount of seconds, then your network crashes. You're probably never going to use it though, to be honest with you guys. Google, you want to find vulnerability feed sites just for having the knowledge of looking up a specific CVE and checking it out and seeing the details and seeing what the fixes are and so on and so forth. Maybe it just hasn't made it to, Metasploit yet. Maybe it's just out in the wild. There's various other miscellaneous tools in Kali Linux that we might touch on as things progress. Again, guys, when you're doing network security penetration testing and network security auditing, you may come across different circumstances that require different sets of tools. So it's a good idea to get familiarized with a lot of the more widely used tools than not when you need them. I make it a point to take a lot of notes as I'm using new software and new tools in trying to run tests against my own lab to get better acquainted with the tool. So this way, next time I need to use it, I'll have my notes with me. So let's get down to post-exploitation. Access granted, now what? Well, first of all, we want to maintain hidden access. We don't want to let anybody know that we're in, right? Because then they can just quickly shut us out and kill our, process or whatever. If we have like a Meterpreter shell on them, they could just kill off our process and we're done. So we'll go through maintaining access, privilege escalation, dumping the password hashes for both Windows and Unix, keeping persistent connections, migrating processes from like whatever we're using with the exploit to like Notepad, and then migrating that again to something that's system level if we're able to. We're going to set up pivoting. We're going to use the compromised systems to leverage other systems on the network so the attacks are further away from us as the source. So we're going to attack one system, hold control of it, then use that system to proxy basically all of our requests and attacks into the internal network or other systems, and then feed back through that host back to us without anybody else knowing. We're going to cover your footprints and tracks. There's different ways to do that. Not only leveraging your privileges and migrating your processes to different processes, system processes, things like that, more obscure processes. But also we want to delete logs or take a copy of the logs. I mean, if you're doing this for a customer, chances are you're probably not going to delete the logs, but you want to at least take a copy of them just so you can show that you were in there and hey, look, this is what it is. You want to capture evidence for proof of access. So not only do you want to capture your port scans from Nmap and your vulnerability scans from OpenVAS and stuff like that, but you want to also maybe record your screen. Inside Kali Linux, there's something called Record My Desktop, and that's kind of like Camtasia is in Windows, or Cam Studio is in Windows. It's open source and free, and you can record your desktop. So if you're in there hacking away and you're busting up their systems, maybe you want to make a video of it for a presentation like, hey, look, I just rooted your entire network in 8 minutes. What do you think that, John Bean hacker down the road is going to be able to do? So also, again, you want to document your process of what you did. I went out, I found this information here on your website. I found your company directory of email addresses and phone extensions. Then from the phone extensions, I wound up dialing certain codes, and I found out that you have a asterisk system for your voice over IP. I found out your provider is, Verizon. I found out all the things you find out, and then up until you actually find the vulnerabilities, you want to document those. Then you want to document what you did to actually gain access, fired Meterpreter shell, so on and so forth. That's why it helps to have a video of it. just so you can go back and fix any of your written notes that you're going to write up for your report if you miss something. So tools of trade you're going to use, again, Metasploit Framework plus Armitage, Cobalt Strike if you want to buy it. If you do not have the capital for it, Metasploit and Armitage will get you going and get you started. You're going to be using backdoor payloads. Some of them are inside Metasploit Framework that you can fire off with Armitage. It'll automatically compile them and put them out there for you and fire them against a target. There are some payloads you could probably download, but we will not be touching on that because I do not want to download payloads to my machine that are not verified. So you're also going to be using John the Ripper and Hashcat for pass hash cracking. Once if we can, escalate privileges enough to get the hashes or the encrypted password hash file for Windows and Unix systems, we download that to our machine, and at our leisure, we can crack those passwords. The perfect hack leaves no traces, right? So you don't want to leave a backdoor in their system that maybe might be picked up by an antivirus at some point when their definitions get updated, or leave a backdoor there for a real hacker, a bad guy to get in and basically use all your hard work and leverage that system now to compromise, multiple other systems or do whatever. So you don't want to do that. You want to crack their passwords if you can. There's word lists out there that are like 60 gigs of word lists. Kali Linux has some available inside of it already, which we'll get to. And I'll show you how to use John, and he shows you how to use Hashcat. And if you're not sure what hashes you're working with, we'll use hash identifier to find out or try to guess what type of hash encryption it is. Also, we're using ARP spoof plus Wireshark. I'm going to show you a man-in-the-middle attack when you're local on a network. Once you gain access to a system, maybe if you have control over other systems, instead of installing keylogger software, which can be picked up by antiviruses, firewalls, things like that, we'll use ARP poisoning and man-in-the-middle attacks with Wireshark to capture those packets and then analyze those packets later on. Once you have those packets, if you have something that was using some sort of hash algorithm to encrypt passwords as they're sending it to a forum or something like that wasn't using specifically SSL but using some sort of other like MD5 encryption or something like that, you can crack those at your own convenience, not under the gun, not under pressure, and have their usernames and passwords to put in your report. Other miscellaneous tools we're going to be using, as we mentioned, HPing, Netcat. We're going to be using Nmap. We're going to be using a lot of different things, and we're going to be using Telnet, Logic, Common Sense, you name it, all those good things, guys. We'll get into it. So reporting, what do you want to include? Well, you want to include your case file. Now, Kali Linux has a reporting type deal called case file, but again, that's kind of like, can't use it for professional use. It's a community version. It's that whole nightmare of greed versus open source, which we're not going to dive into because I rant about that all the time. Exporting from Armitage, it gives you a very crude and rudimentary list of things that the commands that were fired. It's essentially like recording, the commands you would fire on MFS console. So, if you wanted to put that in your report, you could just copy and paste it. Exporting from Nmap into XML and then using a converter to convert it to HTML, awesome. Awesome. The reports look beautiful. You can actually edit the HTML file and put your own logo in there if you wanted to, or you can just print it right off there to a PDF or, print it out on your physical printer. Exporting from Nessus. Nessus, I believe the community version has an exporting feature. I haven't used it in a while. I can't be 100% sure, but I know that their professional version does. Exporting from OpenVAS, we went through that in other videos, but we will go through that again in this video. The PDF function is not working for whatever reason, but the HTML function is working. What you want to include is a proof of access. Include a list of the fixes or the CVEs or links to the CVEs that were found when leveraging those to actually exploit a system. You want to provide techniques and a little bit of help and assistance to avoid further access. Like, hey, install this patch from Microsoft, or hey, install the newest Adobe Reader or something like that. Provide proof that you no longer have an active access to the system. This is important because if you do not show this and they get attacked by somebody else, even if you've cleaned up all of your exploits and vulnerabilities that you use to leverage and get into that system, if they get attacked by another hacker, a black hat hacker or whatever, and their system gets compromised, who's the first person they're going to turn around and point at? You. Because you were the last one to leverage a system. You provided them with a report saying, hey, I was in your system, and hey, I rooted your Windows domain controller, and hey, I cracked all your usernames and passwords. Well, if somebody else does that, they're going to blame you. Hey, well, you must have left something open, a back door in there or something. So you're going to, this is where the Armitage reporting feature comes in handy, or the exporting feature, I should say. It could show that you closed down the session, the Meterpreter session, or the shell session, or something like that. It can show that you closed that down and you deleted it from the database, so it releases you of liability. But also, guys, in your contracts are very important. Make sure you stipulate the terms of your contract very well. Have a lawyer do it for you. It will pay off in the long run. I'm not kidding. Any excuse a client will use, especially if you're doing PCI compliancy or something like that has to do with credit cards, any kind of HIPAA stuff with social security numbers, doctor's offices, hospitals, things like that, you will want a stipulation in your contract saying that you are not liable for this, you are liable for that, so on and so forth. You will want it outlined professionally by a lawyer so there is no loophole, there is no mistake. And if there is a mistake, you have the lawyer to blame, not you. You're also going to need insurance too, guys. That's something that we might touch on too. A little bit of E&O, which is an errors and omissions policy. If you're going to be doing this professionally, you're going to be working for yourself, you will need errors and omissions policies. That basically says that if anything goes wrong and it hits the fan and they do find a way to sue you, at least you have insurance to cover your losses, so you will not go broke. Okay, so moving on, finishing up final tasks, presenting the fancy report and analysis. This is key. You have to really blow them out of their seats with the report that in presentation that you present them with, the information, the facts, the findings, and what you've done. Because you want their future business. I mean, that's what it is. Or if you're working for a company, you want to stay relative. Offer assistance in patching, training, policy management, etc. for an extra fee. If you are doing this as a contractor, always charge an extra fee for that. Do not get them to rope you in for fixing their issues for free, because most companies will try to. Make sure that's also stipulated in your contracts if you're going to be doing this for yourself as a contractor. Make sure that is stipulated in your contract that any work outside of the scope is for an extra fee. You do not want to be working for free, trust me when I tell you, because once they get you, they will keep getting you for that, and you will find yourself being trapped. Final assessment of the network. Once all the training and the policy management, etc., the patching's taken place, all that good stuff, you want to do a post follow-up audit to make sure that everything has been patched correctly. At that point, you want to generate another quick report. You don't have to go into detail, but a quick report saying, okay, you've addressed this, 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 and this. Include it with the original report, check it off, make them sign off on it. You keep a copy for yourself that they signed off on and you signed off on, and they keep a copy. Encrypt your reports and findings. If you're going to hold on to them, guys, if this is going to be like a contracted gig at a company where, quarterly or bi-yearly or yearly, you're going to be doing an audit for them, and you want to keep those files, keep them encrypted. Kali Linux comes with TrueCrypt, so any kind of scan results, whatever, you can stick it on a volume and encrypt it, and you won't have to worry about if somebody somehow steals your system physically or breaks into your system virtually. They're not going to get your customers' information and go and break into their networks, or try to anyway. And then finally, at the end of it, guys, let's move on to the next audit. Close that one up, encrypt it, or securely erase it from your hard drive, and move on. You're not going to be. It's not a 9 to 5 everyday job. It's just not. It's not like regular IT support. IT support's like a 9 to 5 gig, and even if you're a contractor, you're only open from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and after that you don't care, you don't want to hear about anything. A lot of times you'll find yourself doing audits at night because the network's quieter. If something happens, you don't want to disrupt their business traffic, and disrupt their business process throughout the day. So you may be working a lot of nights, weekends. If you do it, emergency system response, which I do. Going in there and mitigating after an attack. You might be doing some, investigative work as to how the attack happened, why it happened, what did they get. So you want to, securely virtualize that machine, and you want to go through it with forensic software and find out exactly where and how and why and what. And then you want to report that to your customer, and they will take care of what they have to take care of on any insurance sides or government agencies that they may need to contact. And they may need your help as well to explain it to, the FBI or whoever, if they get compromised. So that's pretty much it, guys. In the next set of videos, we're going to be getting into actually using these tools. I'm actually going to go through the process in Kali Linux. Now, I have set up a virtual lab here, as you've been probably seeing by following the blog and Facebook. I have a virtual lab going on. We have a Windows 2003 Server 2003 Standard Edition domain controller in there handling DNS, Active Directory, and some other little nice things that I put in there for you guys. We have a Windows XP Service Pack 3 with Windows updates turned off on there, joined to the domain. We have, and that's specially configured as well, so a couple of common misconceptions or misconfigurations in a corporate network that a lot of admins do and overlook. We have a Windows 7 Ultimate machine joined to the network as well. There's a lot of networks that you'll find that have mixed clients in there. Some are Windows XP, some are, Vista, some are Windows 7. Now with Windows 8 being out, there might be some Windows 8 things in there, but it really hasn't made it to the enterprise yet. You might even see some legacy, systems like Windows 2000 and Windows 98 for, a special type of software that you would have found out if you were doing your information gathering, right? That only runs on Windows 98 SE or Windows 2000, right? So you will find some mixed networks from time to time. So we have that going on. We also have a Unix or Linux system, Metasploitable it's called. You can download it if you do a Google search, and I'll put a link in the description as well. Metasploitable is a customized VMware image that's been configured to, by default, have various different web exploits, server exploits, version exploits, remote attacks, client attacks. I mean, it's full of silliness. So you can get in there and hack right away at it. So we have that all in the network. We're trying to simulate a network as best as possible here. I am missing some resources. I am missing Windows Server 2008. However, at the very core of how everything works in the back end of an Active Directory domain system or network, Windows 2003 Server will serve just fine for our purposes. There's not a whole lot of core differences between Windows 2003 Server and Windows 2008 Server. Just really isn't. And that's pretty much it, guys. So stay tuned for the next videos. One other thing I just want to say is I hope you guys have been to check out our website. We got away from Blogspot, Google, and all that. Went ahead and bought a real domain name and set it up for you guys so we could have more control over the website and how it looks and how it pans out and things that we can do with it. That is learnnetsec.com. Check it out. Sign up for a free account so you can make comments and get into some areas that we're going to be setting up soon that are going to be private to members only. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Definitely like our videos, share them up, post them on Twitter. Check us out on Twitter at LearnNetSec. And that's pretty much it, guys. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.